Welcome back where we dive deep into gaming's greatest stories and mythologies. I'm thrilled you've joined me tonight for what promises to be an epic journey through the darkest corners of the Elder Scrolls universe. Before we begin our descent into oblivion itself, I want to ask you something that would truly help this channel grow. If you're finding value in these deep lore explorations, please subscribe. It really does make a bigger difference than you might think. Don't feel forced to do it, only if you want to help me out. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of this year. Now back to what you clicked on to listen. Tonight we're venturing into one of the most fascinating and terrifying aspects of Elder Scrolls lore, the Daedric princes. These aren't mere demons or evil spirits, but rather cosmic entities of immense power whose influence has shaped every age of Tamriel history. Over the next 2.5 hours, we'll explore each of these 17 otherworldly beings, ranking them by their raw power, while uncovering the stories, legends, and devastating impacts they've had on mortal affairs. From the mad god's chaotic realm of the Shivering Isles, to the bloody battlefield domains of Mehrunes Dagon, from Hermaeus Mora, infinite libraries, to the nightmarish hunts of Hersane, we'll examine not just their abilities, but their motivations, their greatest champions, and the prices they demand for their dark gifts. So settle in, get comfortable, and prepare for a journey that will take us through 16 realms of oblivion and beyond, the boundaries of mortal understanding. This is the complete ranking of every Daedric prince by power, a tale of gods and monsters, mortals and immortals, and the eternal struggle between order and chaos that defines the very heart of the Elder Scrolls universe. Chapter 1: Understanding the Daedra. Before we can truly appreciate the awesome and terrible power of the Daedric princes, we must first understand what the Daedra actually are. In the cosmology of the Elder Scrolls, the Daedra are not fallen angels or corrupted spirits, but rather primordial beings who chose not to participate in the creation of the mortal realm, Mundus, while their counterparts, the Daedra, sacrificed portions of their divine essence to create the physical world and were forever diminished by this act. The Daedra retained their full power by refusing to be bound by the limitations of mortality. This fundamental choice has defined the Daedra for all of existence. Where the Daedra became distant and weakened, requiring worship and temples to maintain their connection to mortals, the Daedra remained vibrant and immediate, able to intervene directly in mortal affairs whenever their attention was captured. They are beings of pure will and desire, unbound by the conventional morality that governs mortal societies. The word Daedra itself means "not our ancestors" in the ancient Old Meri tongue, distinguishing them from the Daedra, or our ancestors, whom the elves revere as their creators. This linguistic distinction reveals a deep philosophical divide that has shaped religious thought across Tamriel for millennia. To understand a Daedric prince is to understand a being whose very existence operates according to principles that mortals can barely comprehend. Each Daedric prince rules over a realm of oblivion, a plane of existence that reflects their essential nature and desires. These realms are not merely territories, but extensions of the princes themselves, living manifestations of their will, made into environments where their followers can dwell and their enemies can be tormented. The geography, physics, and even the passage of time within these realms bend to the whims of their rulers. The power of a Daedric prince manifests in multiple ways. There is raw, magical might, the ability to reshape reality, command vast armies of lesser Daedra, and manipulate the fundamental forces of existence. There is also the subtler but equally dangerous power of influence, the capacity to corrupt, inspire, tempt, and guide mortals toward actions that serve the prince's agenda. Some princes prefer direct confrontation and open displays of force, while others work through manipulation, gradually corrupting their targets over decades or centuries. Perhaps most importantly, the Daedric princes are eternal in ways that even other immortal beings are not. While Daedra can diminish and fade if forgotten, and while mortal souls can be destroyed or transformed, the Daedric princes appear to be truly indestructible. They may be banished, contained, or temporarily defeated, but they always return, often stronger and more cunning than before. This permanence gives them a perspective on time and consequence that is almost impossible for mortals to grasp. Their motivations are as alien as their nature. A Daedric prince might orchestrate events that bring about the rise and fall of entire civilizations, simply because the outcome amuses them or satisfies some incomprehensible aspect of their personality. They are not evil in the conventional sense. They are beyond mortal concepts of good and evil, operating according to their own essential nature in ways that often prove catastrophic for anyone who crosses their path. The artifacts they create and bestow upon mortals serve as perfect examples of their alien mindset. A Daedric artifact is never merely a powerful weapon or useful tool. It is always a reflection of its creator's nature, carrying with it both tremendous benefits and terrible costs. The sword that grants its wielder unmatched skill in battle might also gradually corrupt their soul. The ring that provides protection from harm might slowly isolate its wearer from all human connection. Every gift from a Daedric prince comes with strings attached, though those strings might not become apparent for years or even decades. Understanding this fundamental nature of the Daedra is essential as we begin our ranking of the princes by power. We're not simply measuring raw magical ability or military might, though both are certainly factors. We're examining beings whose influence can reshape entire cultures, whose artifacts can alter the course of history, and whose very presence in the mortal realm can herald ages of darkness or transformation. The Daedric princes represent the ultimate expression of unbound will in the Elder Scrolls universe. They are what mortals might become if freed from all limitations, all consequences, and all restraints. A thought that is as terrifying as it is fascinating. As we explore each prince individually, remember that we are studying beings who have witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, who have been worshipped and feared since before recorded history began, and who will continue to shape the destiny of Tamriel long after the last mortal has turned to dust. Chapter 2: The Lesser Powers. Princes 7. We begin our ranking with the Daedric princes, whose power, while still immense by any mortal standard, represents the lower tier among these cosmic entities. Make no mistake, even the weakest Daedric prince commands forces that could level cities and artifacts that can alter the fate of nations. Their placement at the bottom of our list speaks more to the incredible might of their peers than to any genuine weakness on their part. 17. Periite, the Taskmaster. At the bottom of our ranking stands Periite, known as the Taskmaster, Lord of Pestilence, and the Dragon Prince of Plagues. Periite's relatively low ranking might surprise some, given that he governs disease, natural order, and the maintenance of cosmic balance. However, his power is precisely why he ranks so low, not because he lacks strength, but because his role limits how he can express it. Periite is often called the weakest of the Daedric princes, though this designation requires careful interpretation. He is not weak in any absolute sense, but rather constrained by his essential nature as a maintainer of order rather than a force of change. Where other princes seek to impose their will upon reality, Periite works to ensure that reality continues to function according to its proper patterns. His realm in Oblivion, known as the Pits, reflects this role perfectly. It appears as a vast collection of caverns and tunnels, filled with poisonous gases and inhabited by his servants, the Skeevers, Daedra, that appear as giant rats. The realm itself seems almost industrial in its organization, with everything serving a specific function in the great machine of cosmic order that Periite oversees. The diseases that Periite controls are not random pestilences, but carefully calibrated instruments of balance. When populations grow too large and threaten to exhaust their resources, his plagues thin the herds. When magical forces accumulate in dangerous concentrations, his infections drain away the excess energy. When mortals become too proud or too comfortable, his illnesses remind them of their fundamental vulnerability. This role as cosmic custodian places Periite in a unique position among the Daedric princes. while others seek worshippers and champions to advance their agendas. Periite's work often requires him to act against the immediate interests of mortals. He cannot gather large cults or inspire great loyalty because his gifts are inherently unpleasant. Disease, suffering, and death in service of a greater balance that most mortals cannot perceive or appreciate. His artifacts reflect this paradoxical nature. Spellbreaker, his most famous creation, is a shield that protects its wielder from magical attacks, while slowly teaching them to understand the underlying structure of magical forces. The shield doesn't simply block spells, it helps its user comprehend why certain magical combinations are dangerous and how excess magical energy can be safely dissipated. It's a tool of education, as much as protection, embodying Periite's role as a teacher of cosmic principle. The few mortals who do serve Periite willingly tend to be scholars, healers, or philosophers who understand that destruction and creation are two sides of the same cosmic coin. They see past the immediate horror of disease to recognize its role in maintaining the delicate balance that allows life to flourish. These followers often become experts in both causing and curing illnesses, understanding that Periite's gifts must be used with wisdom and restraint. Periite's influence on historical events tends to be subtle but profound. The Great Plague that ended the Urkaviri invasion of Morrowind in the First Era, the mysterious illness that decimated the Dwemer expedition to Red Mountain, the recurring pestilences that have prevented the major powers of Tamriel from achieving total dominance, all bear the subtle touch of the Taskmaster's hand. He shapes history not through grand gestures, but through countless small adjustments that maintain the overall balance of power. The Dragon Prince's power is most evident when that balance is seriously threatened. During the events of the Elder Scrolls IV, Oblivion, Periite demonstrated his ability to trap souls across multiple dimensions simultaneously, holding them in a state of suspended animation while he worked to resolve a crisis that threatened the stability of Oblivion itself. This feat required a precision and understanding of cosmic mechanics that few other princes could match. What keeps Periite at the bottom of our ranking is not lack of power, but lack of ambition. He does not seek to conquer or corrupt in the manner of his peers. His goals are fundamentally conservative, to maintain what exists rather than to transform it. This philosophical limitation means that his power, while vast, is rarely deployed in the dramatic ways that characterize the other princes. 16. Namira, the web spinner of decay. Namira occupies the 16th position in our ranking, and her placement here reflects the specialized nature of her power rather than any lack of potency. Known as the web spinner, the devourer of the dead, and the lady of decay, Namira commands dominion over the ancient darkness, the forgotten, and all things that rot and decompose. Her power is both profound and deeply unsettling, touching on fundamental fears that exist in the hearts of all mortal beings. Her realm, called the Scuttling Void, embodies these fears in their purest form. Visitors describe it as an endless network of tunnels and caverns, shrouded in absolute darkness, where the only sounds are the skittering of countless unseen creatures and the slow dripping of unknown substances. The very air in Namira's realm seems thick with decay, carrying the sweet scent of things long dead and the whispered promises of oblivion. What makes Namira particularly dangerous is her dominion over the forgotten and overlooked. While other princes claim the souls of heroes and villains, Namira gathers those who die alone and unmourned, the beggars, the outcasts, the mentally ill, and the social pariahs who fall through the cracks of civilized society. In death, these forgotten souls find purpose in her service, becoming instruments of her will in the mortal realm. Namira's cultists reflect this emphasis on the abandoned and rejected. They are often found among the homeless, the diseased, and the mentally unstable, people whom mainstream society prefers to ignore. This makes her cults particularly difficult to detect and eliminate, as they operate in the shadows of civilization, where few dare to look. Her followers practice cannibalism and other taboo acts, not out of mere perversity, but as religious observances, that help them understand the fundamental unity of all flesh and the illusion of the barriers that separate life from death. The Ring of Namira, her most well-known artifact, exemplifies her philosophy perfectly. This cursed band grants its wearer enhanced strength and stamina when consuming the flesh of fallen enemies. But more importantly, it gradually erodes the social conditioning that prevents mortals from recognizing their true nature as predatory animals. Wearers of the ring find themselves increasingly comfortable with acts that their former selves would have found abhorrent, as Namira slowly strips away the artificial constraints of civilization. Her influence on history is harder to trace than that of more obvious princes, but it is no less significant. The mysterious disappearances that plague every major city, the unexplained outbreaks of cannibalism among isolated communities, the gradual decay of great monuments and institutions, all bear the subtle mark of Namira's work. She doesn't destroy civilizations through dramatic catastrophes, but rather through the slow erosion of the foundations that hold them together. The ancient Khajiit have perhaps the most sophisticated understanding of Namira's nature, knowing her as Namira, the great darkness that existed before the world began. In their mythology, she represents not evil, but rather the natural state to which all things eventually return. This perspective helps explain why her power, while significant, is primarily reactive, rather than creative. She doesn't build or transform so much as she reveals the decay that already exists beneath the surface of seemingly healthy systems. During the Third Era, Namira's influence became particularly pronounced in the political upheavals that preceded the Oblivion Crisis. The mysterious deaths of several key imperial officials, the gradual breakdown of trade relationships between the provinces, the increasing reports of banditry and social unrest, all reflected her growing influence over the forgotten and dispossessed who had been failed by the existing order. What places Namira at 16th in our ranking is the passive nature of much of her power. While she can command vast numbers of Daedra and has the ability to accelerate decay and corruption, her influence typically requires existing weakness or vulnerability to take hold. She is most dangerous when civilizations are already beginning to falter, making her more of an opportunistic force than a direct threat to stable, healthy societies. 15. Malakath, the spurned god. Malakath holds the 15th position in our ranking, and his story is perhaps the most tragic among all the Daedric princes. Known as the spurned god, the sworn enemy of Bothia, and the keeper of the spurned and ostracized, Malakath was not always a Daedric prince. According to the most widely accepted accounts, he was once Trinimac, the strongest of the Aldmeri ancestor spirits and champion of Auriel, who was transformed into his current state through the machinations of Bothia. The transformation of Trinimac into Malakath represents one of the most significant metamorphoses in the history of the Elder Scrolls universe. Trinimac was not merely strong, he was the physical embodiment of the concept of strength itself, the warrior god who stood as the ultimate guardian of the Aldmeri people. When Boethia defeated and devoured him, she didn't simply destroy him, but rather corrupted him into his opposite, creating a being whose power was inextricably linked to loss, betrayal, and the struggle of the downtrodden. Malakath's realm, the Ash Pit, reflects this tragic transformation. It appears as a harsh, mountainous region dominated by a massive fortress, where the spirits of all who have died in battle, while defending lost causes, gather. The realm is neither beautiful nor terrible in the conventional sense. It is simply grim, a place where endurance matters more than glory, and where the strong protect the weak, not for honor, but because it is the right thing to do. This principle of protection extends to Malakath's role in the mortal realm. He has become the patron of all who are spurned, betrayed, or outcast, most notably the Orsimer, or Orcs, who follow him as their primary deity. The Orcs themselves are said to be the transformed followers of Trinimac, changed by their god's corruption into a people marked by physical strength, but social rejection. Under Malakath's guidance, they have built a culture based on honor, strength, and the protection of those who cannot protect themselves. The Code of Malakath, which governs Orcish society, reflects his transformed nature perfectly. It emphasizes personal strength and martial prowess, but always in service to the community and the protection of the vulnerable. Weakness is not despised but rather protected, and betrayal is considered the ultimate sin. The code creates warriors who are simultaneously feared for their strength and respected for their unwavering loyalty to their principles. Malakath's artifacts embody these same principles. Valendrum, his great hammer, grants its wielder tremendous physical power, but also compels them to use that power in defense of the innocent and wrong. The weapon literally cannot be effectively wielded by those who would use its strength for selfish or malicious purposes. Other artifacts attributed to Malakath, such as the Helm of Oring Bearclaw, enhance the user's ability to lead and protect others, while making them more resistant to the kind of corruption and betrayal that destroyed Trinimac. The tragic irony of Malakath's situation is that his transformation actually increased his relevance and influence in the mortal realm. While Trinimac was powerful but remote, Malakath is intimately connected to the struggles and suffering of mortals. His change from a god of victory to a god of endurance has made him more accessible to those who need divine intervention most: the defeated, the abandoned, and the oppressed. Throughout Tamrielic history, Malakath's influence can be seen in the countless last stands made by desperate people defending hopeless causes. The Orcish strongholds that continue to resist imperial authority despite overwhelming odds, the slave rebellions that refuse to surrender even when facing certain death, the individual warriors who stand against impossible enemies to protect their loved ones, all draw strength from Malakath's example. During the events of the Third Era, Malakath's role became particularly important as social upheaval displaced traditional power structures throughout Tamriel. As the empire weakened and local conflicts increased, more people found themselves in the kind of desperate situations where Malakath's philosophy became relevant. His worship spread beyond the Orcish strongholds to include human refugees, displaced Dunmer, and other groups who had been abandoned by the conventional gods. What keeps Malakath at 15th in our ranking is the reactive nature of his power. While he is immensely strong and commands the loyalty of some of the fiercest warriors in Tamriel, his influence is primarily defensive, rather than aggressive. He responds to injustice and betrayal rather than creating it, and his power is most effective when his followers are fighting from a position of weakness, rather than strength. This limitation, while noble in its implications, reduces his ability to directly shape major historical events in the way that more proactive princes can. 14. Azura, the Queen of Dawn and Dusk. Azura, holding the 14th position in our ranking, occupies a unique place among the Daedric princes as one of the few who is generally considered benevolent by mortal standards. Known as the Queen of Dawn and Dusk, the Mother of the Rose, and Azura of the Crimson Gate, she governs the liminal moments of transition, dawn and dusk, life and death, prophecy and fulfillment. Her power lies not in raw force, but in her unparalleled ability to perceive and manipulate the threads of fate. Azura's realm, Moonshadow, is described as one of the most beautiful places in all of Oblivion. It appears as an endless landscape of impossible beauty, where purple flowers bloom beneath silver trees, and crystal streams reflect the light of perpetual twilight. The realm exists in a state of eternal transition between day and night, perfectly embodying Azura's dominion over liminal states and moments of change. What makes Azura particularly powerful is her prophetic abilities, which far exceed those of any other Daedric prince. She doesn't simply see possible futures, she understands the complex web of causality that connects present actions to future consequences. This allows her to position her followers and artifacts in precisely the right places at precisely the right times to achieve outcomes that seem miraculous to outside observers. The Dunmer people of Morrowind revere Azura as one of their three principal deities, calling her one of the good Daedra, whose worship was acceptable even during the height of the Tribunal's power. This relationship gives her a massive base of worshippers and a deep connection to one of Tamriel's most magically sophisticated cultures. The Dunmer's expertise in prophecy and fate magic stems largely from Azura's teachings, making them some of the most effective mortal servants any Daedric prince has ever commanded. Azura's star, her most famous artifact, demonstrates her power over souls and the manipulation of spiritual energy. This soul gem can be recharged infinitely, allowing its user to trap and release souls without the gem itself being consumed. More importantly, the star serves as a focus for Azura's own attention, allowing her to observe and influence events in the mortal realm with unprecedented precision. Anyone who possesses the star becomes, in effect, an extension of Azura's will, whether they realize it or not. Her role in the events surrounding the fall of the tribunal demonstrates both the extent and the limitations of her power. For centuries, Azura was unable to directly challenge the three god kings who had usurped divine power in Morrowind, but she patiently laid the groundwork for their eventual downfall through carefully orchestrated prophecies and the strategic placement of key individuals. She ensured that when the tribunal's power finally began to wane, her chosen champion would be in position to restore the proper order. The Nerevarine prophecy represents perhaps the greatest demonstration of Azura's prophetic mastery. She didn't simply predict that a hero would arise to defeat Dagoth and restore balance to Morrowind. She actively shaped events across multiple centuries to ensure that such a hero would emerge with exactly the right combination of skills, knowledge, and motivation to succeed. The prophecy wasn't just a prediction, but a complex magical working that guided probability itself toward the desired outcome. Azura's influence extends beyond Morrowind through her connection to the Khajiit people, who know her as one of their primary deities. The Khajiit lunar calendar and their complex understanding of the various forms their people can take, depending on the phases of the moons, both reflect Azura's dominion over cycles and transitions. Through the Khajiit, she maintains influence throughout the southern regions of Tamriel and access to their extensive trade networks and intelligence-gathering capabilities. Her benevolent reputation, while generally deserved, shouldn't obscure the fact that Azura can be ruthless when crossed. When the Khaima people followed the tribunal and abandoned their worship of the Daedra, Azura cursed them with the dark skin and red eyes that mark the modern Dunmer. This transformation wasn't merely cosmetic, but carried deep spiritual implications, marking the entire people as having broken faith with their divine protectors. The curse has persisted for millennia, demonstrating both the permanence of Azura's power and her willingness to punish those who betray her trust. The romantic and poetic aspects of Azura's nature, her beauty, her association with flowers and moonlight, her role as a patron of lovers and artists, might seem to diminish her power compared to more obviously martial princes. However, these softer attributes are actually sources of strength, allowing her to inspire devotion and loyalty in ways that fear-based relationships cannot match. Her followers serve her out of love rather than terror, making them more creative, more persistent, and more willing to make genuine sacrifices for her cause. During the Oblivion Crisis, Azura's prophetic abilities allowed her to prepare her followers for the challenges they would face, though her ability to directly intervene was limited by the cosmic chaos created by Mehrunes Dagon's invasion. Her guidance helped many communities survive the crisis, and her prophecies provided crucial intelligence about Daedric movements and strategies. What places Azura at 14th in our ranking is the primarily defensive and reactive nature of her power. While her prophetic abilities are unmatched and her influence over fate is profound, she typically works through mortal agents rather than direct intervention. Her power is most effective over long periods of time, making her less capable of responding to immediate threats than princes who can deploy raw force directly. However, her patience and strategic thinking make her one of the most dangerous opponents any of the other princes could face in a conflict that spans decades or centuries. Chapter 3. The Middle Powers. Princes. As we move into the middle tier of our ranking, we encounter Daedric princes whose power begins to approach truly cosmic scales. These beings don't merely influence events, they reshape the fundamental nature of reality in their domains of influence. Their artifacts can alter the course of civilizations, their cults can topple empires, and their direct intervention can rewrite the rules by which magic and mortality operate. 13. Vaermina, the web spinner of dreams. Vaermina, positioned at 13th in our ranking, holds dominion over a realm that every mortal enters, but few understand. The world of dreams and nightmares, known as the web spinner, the Lady of Nightmares, and the Harvester of Dreams. Vaermina's power operates primarily in the liminal space between consciousness and unconsciousness, where the boundaries between possibility and reality become fluid and malleable. Her realm, called Quagmire, exists as a constantly shifting landscape of dreams and nightmares, drawn from the sleeping minds of mortals across all the planes of existence. Visitors describe it as a place where geography changes based on the observer's subconscious fears and desires, where familiar locations from childhood memories blend seamlessly with impossible architectures that could only exist in dreams. The sky might rain blood in one area, while another experiences snowfalls of forgotten words, and travelers often find themselves reliving their most traumatic memories as physical environments they must navigate. What makes Vaermina particularly dangerous is that her influence doesn't require physical presence or obvious magical intervention. Every mortal who sleeps becomes potentially vulnerable to her manipulation, as dreams provide a direct pathway into the unconscious mind. Through nightmares, she can drive people to madness, plant false memories, or gradually corrupt their moral sensibilities. Through pleasant dreams, she can seduce mortals into becoming willing servants, offering them experiences in sleep that are more satisfying than anything their waking lives can provide. The Skull of Corruption, Vaermina's most notorious artifact, embodies her power over the dreaming mind. This staff allows its wielder to steal dreams from sleeping victims, converting those dreams into powerful magical energy while leaving the dreamers as empty husks. More insidiously, the staff can implant false dreams and memories, effectively rewriting a person's understanding of their own past and identity. A skilled user of the Skull of Corruption can reshape entire communities by systematically altering the dreams of their inhabitants over months or years. Vaermina's cults operate in a fundamentally different manner from those serving other Daedric princes. Her followers often don't realize they're serving her, as their recruitment and indoctrination occurs entirely within the dream realm. A person might live an apparently normal life during their waking hours, while serving as Vaermina's agent in their dreams, carrying out missions and gathering information in the unconscious realm that they cannot remember upon awakening. This makes her cults nearly impossible to detect through conventional means. The city of Strosmakai's famous Sleeping Tree Inn serves as an example of Vaermina's subtle influence. For decades, travelers who stayed at the inn reported unusually vivid dreams that often contained prophetic elements or revealed hidden knowledge. What most visitors never realized was that Vaermina was using their sleeping minds as a communication network, allowing her followers to share information and coordinate activities across vast distances through shared dream experiences. Her influence on major historical events is often overlooked because it operates through subtle psychological manipulation rather than obvious displays of power. The paranoid delusions that led to the War of the Blue Divide, the mass hysteria that precipitated the Nahatan flu panic, the mysterious madness that afflicted several key imperial negotiators during crucial peace talks, all bear the hallmarks of Vaermina's dream manipulation techniques. The relationship between Vaermina and the art of magic is particularly complex. Dreams have always been recognized as a source of magical inspiration, and many of the most powerful spells in existence were first conceived in the dream realm. Vaermina doesn't prevent this process, but rather corrupts it, ensuring that magical knowledge gained through dreams comes with hidden costs or subtle flaws that won't become apparent until the magic is used in crucial situations. During the Third Era, Vaermina's power grew significantly as the increasing stress and uncertainty of imperial decline led to widespread sleep disorders across Tamriel. The proliferation of insomnia, night terrors, and anxiety dreams provided her with unprecedented access to mortal minds, allowing her to influence political and social developments on a scale that few other princes could match through purely mental manipulation. The academic study of dreams and sleep magic, in institutions like the University of Gwilym, owes much to Vermina's influence, though most scholars are unaware of this connection. Research into the nature of consciousness and the relationship between dreams and reality often leads investigators into areas where Vermina's power is strongest, and many promising scholars have been quietly recruited into her service through their own research into the mysteries they sought to understand. Vermina's ranking at 13th reflects both the vast scope of her influence and the limitations imposed by the nature of dream-based power. While she can affect virtually any mortal through their dreams, her ability to translate dream influence into direct physical effects is more limited than that of princes who operate primarily in the waking world. However, her capacity for long-term psychological manipulation and her nearly undetectable methods of operation make her one of the most persistently dangerous princes for mortals to encounter. 12. Clavicus Vile, the Prince of Bargains. Clavicus Vile occupies the 12th position in our ranking, and his placement reflects the unique nature of his power among the Daedric princes. Known as the Prince of Bargains, the granter of wishes, and the child god of the morning star, Clavicus Vile's strength lies not in raw magical might, but in his unparalleled ability to understand and exploit the desires, weaknesses, and contradictions that exist within mortal hearts. His realm, called the Fields of Regret, appears as a twisted paradise where every desire can be fulfilled, but always at a cost that becomes apparent only after the bargain is struck. The landscape shifts to accommodate the dreams of visitors, showing them visions of everything they've ever wanted: wealth, power, love, revenge, while carefully concealing the prices that must be paid to achieve these goals. Gardens of golden flowers bloom alongside trees that bear fruit of pure sorrow, and crystalline streams carry the tears of those who discovered too late what their wishes truly cost. Clavicus Vile's power operates through the fundamental principle that every mortal wants something they cannot achieve through their own efforts. This universal truth provides him with an endless supply of potential bargains, as there is always someone desperate enough to make a deal with a Daedric prince if the offered reward seems worth the risk. What makes these bargains particularly dangerous is that Clavicus Vile never lies about what he offers. He simply ensures that mortals never fully understand what they're asking for. The prince's most famous companion is Barbas, a supernatural dog who serves as both his voice and his conscience. Barbas often appears to mortals who are considering making bargains with Clavicus Vile, ostensibly to help them, but actually to ensure that they understand just enough about the true nature of their agreement to make their eventual regret more delicious. The relationship between Clavicus Vile and Barbas represents a complex form of magical symbiosis, where the dog's apparent opposition to his master's schemes actually enhances the prince's power by making potential victims feel they have received fair warning. The mask of Clavicus Vile demonstrates his power over appearance and perception. This artifact doesn't simply change the wearer's face, it transforms them into the most charismatic and persuasive version of themselves possible. The wearer becomes irresistibly charming, able to convince almost anyone of almost anything through sheer force of personality. However, this power comes with the gradual corruption of the wearer's true self, as they become addicted to the artificial charisma and slowly lose the ability to form genuine relationships based on their authentic personality. Throughout Tamrielic history, Clavicus Vile's bargains have shaped the destiny of kingdoms and empires. The Dwemer's mysterious disappearance may have resulted from a collective bargain with the prince, their desire to transcend mortality and achieve true understanding of divine mechanics, granted in a way they never anticipated. The rapid rise of certain merchant dynasties, the inexplicable military victories of outmatched armies, the sudden artistic inspirations that launched cultural renaissances, all bear the subtle signature of carefully crafted Daedric bargains. The prince's influence operates through a network of mortal agents who may not even realize they're serving him. A merchant who made a deal for prosperity decades ago continues to unknowingly serve Clavicus Vile's interests as their business empire expands. A scholar who bargained for knowledge finds themselves gradually drawn into researches that benefit the prince's long-term goals. A warrior who gains strength to protect their family discovers that their enhanced abilities come with an irresistible compulsion to seek out increasingly dangerous conflicts. What makes Clavicus Vile particularly dangerous is his understanding of mortal psychology. He doesn't simply offer people what they think they want, he offers them what they actually want, but are afraid to admit to themselves. The noble who claims to seek power to help their people actually wants the authority to force others to acknowledge their superiority. The merchant who says they need wealth to support their family actually craves the respect and fear that money can buy. By fulfilling these hidden desires, Clavicus Vile creates bargains that his clients initially resist, but ultimately cannot refuse. The Umbra Sword represents one of Clavicus Vile's most complex creations, a weapon that contains a sentient spirit capable of possessing its wielders. The sword offers incredible combat prowess, but gradually subsumes the user's personality, eventually transforming them into a perfect killing machine with no will of their own. This artifact demonstrates how the prince's bargains often involve giving mortals exactly what they ask for, while ensuring that the consequences extend far beyond what they imagined. During the Oblivion Crisis, Clavicus Vile's role was more subtle than that of the obviously destructive princes. While Marunes Dagon ravaged the material world with direct assault, Clavicus Vile worked behind the scenes, offering desperate people the power they needed to survive the chaos in exchange for future considerations. Many of the heroes who emerged from that crisis carried with them bargains that would influence their actions for years to come, ensuring that the prince's influence would shape the post-crisis reconstruction of imperial society. Clavicus Vile's placement at 12th in our ranking reflects his tremendous influence over mortal affairs, balanced against his limitations in direct magical combat. While he can reshape societies through carefully orchestrated bargains and possesses artifacts of immense power, his strength depends largely on mortal cooperation. Unlike princes who can simply impose their will through force, Clavicus Vile must work within the framework of mortal desire and free will, making his power more subtle, but also more sustainable than more obviously coercive approaches. 11. Hisina, the Huntsman. Hisina claims the 11th position in our ranking as the Huntsman, the father of man-beasts, and the prince of the hunt. His power draws from one of the most primal and universal aspects of mortal existence, the predatory instinct that lurks beneath the veneer of civilization. While other princes appeal to complex desires or abstract concepts, Hisina offers something far more immediate and visceral: the pure, uncomplicated joy of the hunt and the freedom that comes from embracing one's most basic nature. His realm, known as the Hunting Grounds, exists as an infinite wilderness where the greatest hunts in history play out in eternal cycles. Vast forests stretch beyond an horizon, filled with prey both mundane and fantastic, while ancient cities crumble beneath aggressive vines that have reclaimed them for the wild. The realm's geography shifts to accommodate the needs of any particular hunt, creating environments that challenge both predator and prey to their absolute limits. What sets Hisina apart from many other Daedric princes is the purity of his relationship with his followers. Where other princes often corrupt or manipulate their worshippers, Hisina offers a straightforward exchange. Embrace your predatory nature, and he will enhance it beyond mortal limitations. His lycanthropes, werewolves, werebears, wereboars, and other shapeshifters represent mortals who have accepted this bargain completely, trading civilized constraints for supernatural hunting abilities. The transformation into a lycanthrope involves more than just gaining the ability to assume animal form. Hisina's gift fundamentally alters the recipient's relationship with their own instincts and desires. The artificial barriers that civilization erects between rational thought and primal impulse begin to dissolve, allowing the transformed individual to experience a unity of purpose and intention that most mortals never achieve. This psychological transformation often proves more addictive than the physical changes, as lycanthropes discover a form of personal authenticity that their civilized lives never provided. Hisina's artifacts reflect his philosophy of enhancing natural abilities rather than replacing them with artificial power. The Ring of Hersini allows its wearer to control their lycanthropic transformations, changing at will rather than being slave to lunar cycles or emotional triggers. The Savior's hide provides protection that grows stronger based on the wearer's own hunting skills and survival instincts. These items don't make their users dependent on external power, but rather amplify capabilities they already possess. The prince's influence extends far beyond his lycanthropic servants. Many of Tamriel's greatest hunters, warriors, and survivors carry some touch of Hircine's blessing, often without realizing it. The uncanny tracking abilities of certain scouts, the supernatural endurance of legendary warriors, the inexplicable survival skills of wilderness guides. All may reflect minor aspects of the huntsman's favor granted to mortals who have proven themselves worthy through their actions rather than their prayers. Throughout history, Hircine's wild hunt has served as both blessing and curse for the people of Tamriel. This supernatural phenomenon involves the prince leading a pack of the greatest hunters and predators from across the planes of existence in pursuit of prey that has somehow attracted his personal attention. The wild hunt might target a single individual who has proven themselves a worthy challenge, or it might focus on an entire city that has grown too comfortable with its artificial separation from the natural world. The relationship between Hircine and the various beast folk of Tamriel is complex and often misunderstood. While he is not their creator, the Khajiit trace their origins to Azura. While the Argonians emerged from the mysterious Hist, he represents an aspect of their nature that civilized races often try to suppress. The Khajiit concept of the pride of Alkosh and the Argonian understanding of sexual nature both contain elements that align with Hircine's philosophy of embracing rather than denying one's essential character. The City of Solitude's famous werewolf trials during the Third Era demonstrate both Hircine's influence and the fear it generates among civilized populations. The systematic persecution of suspected lycanthropes actually increased Hircine's power in the region, as the hunted began to identify more strongly with their predatory nature, and the hunters became increasingly brutal and single-minded in their pursuit. The ironic result was that both sides of the conflict came to embody aspects of the huntsman's philosophy. Hircine's role during the Oblivion Crisis was characteristically direct, while other princes pursued complex schemes or subtle manipulations. Hircine simply released his most powerful servants into the mortal realm to hunt Daedra from other spheres. The sight of werewolf packs coordinating with imperial legions to bring down Daedric titans became one of the more surreal aspects of the crisis, demonstrating how Hircine's straightforward approach to power could be surprisingly effective in chaotic situations. The prince's philosophy extends beyond simple predation to encompass broader concepts of natural balance and the relationship between civilization and wilderness. His followers often become environmental guardians of sorts, protecting wild spaces from excessive development, while also ensuring that civilized peoples don't become so divorced from nature that they lose essential survival skills. This dual role, as both destroyer and protector, reflects Hircine's understanding that true strength comes from harmony with natural forces rather than domination over them. What places Hircine at 11th in our ranking is the voluntary limitation he places on his own power. Unlike princes who seek to corrupt or control mortals against their will, Hircine only grants his gifts to those who actively choose to embrace their predatory nature. This self-imposed restriction reduces his potential pool of servants, but ensures that those who do serve him are completely committed to his cause. His power is immense within its natural domain, but becomes less effective when applied to mortals who have genuinely rejected their connection to the wild. 10. Sanguine, the Lord of Revelry. Sanguine secures the 10th position in our ranking through his mastery over some of the most fundamental and irresistible aspects of mortal nature. Known as the Lord of Revelry, the Blood Prince, and the Prince of Hedonistic Pursuits, Sanguine commands the domains of debauchery, celebration, and the pursuit of pleasure in all its forms. His power lies not in forcing mortals to act against their nature, but in amplifying their existing desires until they become irresistible compulsions. His realm, called the Myriad Realms of Revelry, exists as an infinite collection of party environments, each one perfectly designed to provide the ultimate indulgence for different types of pleasure seekers. Visitors might find themselves in opulent ballrooms where the dancing never stops, taverns where the finest ales flow endlessly, gladiatorial arenas where the combat is brutal but exhilarating, or more intimate chambers where every fantasy can be safely explored. The realm adapts to each visitor's particular appetites, ensuring that everyone who enters finds exactly the type of revelry that appeals to them most. What makes Sanguine particularly dangerous is his deep understanding of the relationship between pleasure and addiction. He doesn't simply offer mortals a good time, he provides them with experiences so perfectly calibrated to their desires that the memory of them becomes a constant source of dissatisfaction with normal life. Those who have truly experienced Sanguine's hospitality often find that mortal pleasures lose their appeal, creating a psychological dependency that drives them to seek increasingly extreme experiences in futile attempts to recapture the intensity of their time in the myriad realms. The Sanguine Rose, his most famous artifact, demonstrates this philosophy perfectly. This staff doesn't directly harm enemies, but rather summons a Daedra, whose presence gradually influences everyone in the area to abandon their inhibitions and pursue their immediate desires without regard for consequences. Battlefields touched by the rose's power transform into chaotic melees, where soldiers abandon tactical thinking in favor of personal grudges, bloodlust, or sudden romantic obsessions. The weapon wins conflicts, not through superior force, but by destroying the discipline and coordination that organized resistance requires. Sanguine's influence operates through a vast network of seemingly innocuous establishments throughout Tamriel. Taverns, brothels, gambling halls, fighting pits, and similar venues often carry subtle touches of his blessing, enhancing the experiences they provide just enough to keep customers coming back, while gradually wearing down their resistance to more extreme forms of indulgence. Many successful entertainers, courtesans, brewers, and others who profit from mortal pleasure carry some small measure of Sanguine's favor, often without realizing the true source of their success. The annual festivals that occur throughout Tamriel often show signs of Sanguine's influence, particularly those that involve temporary suspension of normal social rules. The New Life Festival's tradition of masters serving their servants, the mid-year celebrations sanctioned gambling, the various harvest festivals, where behavior that would normally be scandalous becomes acceptable, all provide opportunities for Sanguine to normalize increasingly transgressive behavior under the guise of harmless tradition. Historical events influenced by Sanguine often involve the sudden breakdown of social order in ways that seem spontaneous, but follow patterns that reveal underlying manipulation. The infamous Night of Fires in Daggerfall, when a noble wedding celebration transformed into a city-wide riot that lasted for 3 days, bears all the hallmarks of Sanguine's work. Similarly, the mysterious madness that overtook the entire court of Wayrest during a diplomatic reception, leading to declarations of war that were later retracted with mutual embarrassment, suggests the prince's involvement in destabilizing political situations through carefully timed revelry. The relationship between Sanguine and various criminal organizations is complex, but significant. While he doesn't directly command thieves' guilds or smuggling rings, many such organizations carry his unofficial blessing due to their role in providing prohibited pleasures to those willing to pay for them. The Thieves' Guild's traditional immunity from serious persecution often reflects the fact that many of their clients include nobles and officials whose vices have been carefully cultivated by Sanguine's influence. During the Oblivion Crisis, Sanguine's role was characteristically indirect, but nonetheless important. As communities faced existential threats from Daedric invasion, the need for stress relief and escapist pleasure increased dramatically. Sanguine's establishments provided crucial psychological release valves that helped prevent total social collapse, but they also served as recruitment centers where desperate people could be convinced to make increasingly dangerous bargains in exchange for temporary relief from their fears. The academic study of Sanguine's influence reveals the sophisticated understanding of mortal psychology that underlies his apparently simple approach to power. Pleasure and pain exist in a complex relationship, where the absence of one intensifies the experience of the other. By providing mortals with experiences of perfect pleasure, Sanguine makes normal life seem unbearably dull by comparison, creating a form of psychological torture that drives his victims to seek ever more intense experiences. The prince's influence on art and culture throughout Tamriel cannot be overstated. Many of the most celebrated works of literature, music, and visual art were created by individuals seeking to capture or recreate experiences they had in Sanguine's realm. These artistic works often contain subtle influences that predispose audiences toward hedonistic thinking, spreading Sanguine's philosophy through cultural transmission rather than direct magical compulsion. Sanguine's 10th place ranking reflects both the broad scope of his influence and the voluntary nature of much of his power. While he can corrupt entire communities and has access to some of the most influential individuals in any society, his approach requires some degree of willing participation from his targets. Mortals who genuinely reject hedonistic pleasure prove largely immune to his influence, though such individuals are far rarer than most people suppose. His power grows stronger in proportion to the sophistication and wealth of the societies he influences, making him particularly dangerous during periods of peace and prosperity, when people have both the time and resources to pursue increasingly elaborate forms of entertainment. Nocturnal. The Night Mistress. Nocturnal holds the 9th position in our ranking as one of the most enigmatic and fundamentally powerful of all Daedric princes. Known as the Night Mistress, the Daedra of Darkness, and the Empress of Murk, Nocturnal's domain encompasses far more than simple darkness or nighttime activities. She commands the very concept of the unknown, the hidden, and the spaces between visible reality, where secrets dwell and mysteries multiply. Her realm, the Evergloam, defies easy description because it exists primarily as an absence rather than a presence. Visitors report experiencing it as endless twilight, where familiar objects and landscapes appear but remain, somehow insubstantial and elusive. The realm seems to exist in the spaces between other places, accessible through doorways that appear in shadows and passages that lead nowhere in the conventional sense. Navigation through the Evergloam depends more on understanding concepts like secrecy and hiddenness than on following physical directions. What makes Nocturnal truly dangerous is her relationship with the concept of ownership and boundaries. She is not merely a goddess of thieves, but rather the embodiment of the principle that all boundaries, physical, magical, or conceptual, are ultimately artificial constructs that can be circumvented by those who understand their true nature. This philosophy extends far beyond simple burglary to encompass the violation of any attempt to keep knowledge, power, or resources exclusive to particular individuals or groups. The Thieves Guild's relationship with Nocturnal demonstrates how this philosophy translates into practical power. Guild members don't simply steal physical objects, they appropriate opportunities, luck, and even abstract concepts like reputation or trust. A master thief blessed by Nocturnal might steal not just a noble's wealth, but their certainty, leaving them plagued by doubts and suspicions that gradually destroy their social relationships. The Guild's famous luck isn't random chance, but rather a systematic redistribution of fortune from those who hoard it to those who understand its fluid nature. Nocturnal's artifacts embody her power over boundaries and transitions. The skeleton key doesn't simply open locked doors. It opens any barrier that prevents access to something hidden or protected. This includes metaphysical barriers like magical wards, temporal barriers like prophecies that haven't yet come to pass, and even conceptual barriers like the distinction between reality and possibility. The key grants its user access to knowledge, places, and states of being that are normally beyond mortal reach, though using it often reveals why certain things were hidden in the first place. The grey cowl of Nocturnal represents another aspect of her power, the ability to exist outside normal systems of identity and accountability. The cowl doesn't simply make its wearer unrecognizable, but actually removes them from the causal chains that connect actions to consequences. Someone wearing the cowl can commit acts that would normally generate lasting effects, but find that the universe seems to forget about their involvement once the cowl is removed. This power over identity and memory makes Nocturnal's champions nearly impossible to track or punish through conventional means. Throughout Telluric history, Nocturnal's influence can be detected in the sudden disappearances of important documents, the mysterious failures of seemingly secure systems, and the inexplicable redistribution of wealth and power that occurs during periods of social upheaval. The collapse of the Duema banking system in the First Era, the simultaneous theft of crown jewels from multiple kingdoms during the Second Era, the mysterious disappearance of several Elder Scrolls during crucial historical moments, all bear the subtle signature of Nocturnal's work. Her relationship with information and knowledge is particularly complex. Nocturnal doesn't seek to destroy or hoard information, but rather to ensure that it flows to where it can be most effectively used. Secret police organizations often find their most carefully guarded intelligence mysteriously leaked to rebel groups, while isolated scholars suddenly gain access to research materials they shouldn't be able to obtain. This redistribution of knowledge accelerates social and political change by ensuring that information asymmetries don't become permanent sources of oppression. The concept of the Twilight Sepulchre represents Nocturnal's role as guardian of the boundary between existence and void. This mystical location serves as both her earthly shrine and a gateway to the spaces between reality, where lost things accumulate. The Sepulchre isn't simply a temple, but rather a conceptual anchor point that prevents certain forms of nothingness from expanding into the material world. Nocturnal's guardianship of this boundary makes her essential to the continued existence of reality itself, even though most mortals remain unaware of this cosmic responsibility. During the Oblivion Crisis, Nocturnal's role was characteristically subtle but crucial. While other princes either participated in or opposed Merenice Dagon's invasion directly, Nocturnal worked to maintain the hidden pathways and secret knowledge that resistance movements needed to coordinate their efforts. Information about Daedric weaknesses, escape routes through supposedly secure areas, and intelligence about invasion plans all flowed through channels influenced by her power. The academic study of Nocturnal's influence reveals fundamental questions about the nature of ownership and secrecy that most societies prefer not to examine too closely. If all boundaries are artificial, what justifies private property? If all secrets can ultimately be revealed, how can governments maintain necessary security? If identity itself is fluid, what does individual accountability mean? These philosophical challenges make Nocturnal's worship attractive to intellectuals and revolutionaries who seek to transform existing social structures. Her influence on the development of magical theory has been particularly significant. Many breakthroughs in spatial magic, illusion magic, and enchantment have come from researchers who gained access to normally hidden information through Nocturnal's favor. The understanding that reality contains spaces between spaces, that perception can be more important than objective truth, and that boundaries exist primarily in the mind, rather than in the external world, all reflect insights that originated in studies of Nocturnal's domain. Nocturnal's 9th place ranking reflects both her enormous influence over fundamental aspects of reality and the limitations imposed by her role as a guardian of cosmic boundaries. While she can circumvent almost any human-created barrier and has access to knowledge that spans multiple planes of existence, her cosmic responsibilities prevent her from using her full power in purely destructive ways. She must maintain the balance between hiddenness and revelation, secrecy and disclosure, ensuring that reality itself doesn't collapse into either total transparency or absolute concealment. This self-imposed limitation makes her less directly dangerous than princes who can deploy their power without such constraints, but it also makes her one of the most fundamentally important entities in the entire cosmological structure. Chapter 4: The Greater Powers. Princes. We now enter the realm of the truly cosmic Daedric princes, beings whose power operates on scales that can reshape continents, rewrite the fundamental laws of magic, and influence the basic structure of reality itself. These princes don't merely command vast armies or possess powerful artifacts. They embody concepts so fundamental to existence that their mere presence can alter the rules by which the universe operates. Sate, Boethiah, the Prince of Plots. Boethiah claims the 8th position in our ranking as one of the most actively influential and historically significant Daedric princes, known as the Prince of Plots, the Deceiver, and the Warrior King. Boethiah commands the domains of betrayal, overthrow, and the hymenant transformation that occurs when established orders are challenged by those with the will and cunning to seize power for themselves. Her realm, called Attribution Share, exists as a constantly shifting landscape of battlefields, throne rooms, and elaborate mazes where political intrigue and military conflict blend seamlessly together. The realm reflects Boethiah's philosophy that true strength emerges only through conflict, with environments that change based on the struggles occurring within them. A peaceful meadow might transform into a war-torn wasteland if its inhabitants become complacent, while a hellish battleground might bloom into paradise if the combatants demonstrate sufficient cunning and determination. What makes Boethiah particularly dangerous is her understanding that revolution and change are not only inevitable, but necessary for the continued vitality of any system. She doesn't simply encourage random destruction, but rather identifies the weak points in existing power structures, and then provides the tools and inspiration necessary for those structures to be overthrown by their most capable challengers. This process, while often brutal, serves to strengthen societies by ensuring that only the most competent and adaptable individuals rise to positions of authority. The transformation of Trinimac into Malakath represents perhaps the greatest demonstration of Boethiah's power in recorded history. By defeating and literally consuming the strongest of the Aldmeri ancestor spirits, she not only removed a major obstacle to her people's migration to Morrowind, but also created a new Daedric prince, whose existence would forever serve as a reminder of her victory. This act required not just raw power, but also profound understanding of the relationship between identity, consciousness, and divine essence. Boethiah's artifacts reflect her philosophy of empowerment through conflict. The ebony mail doesn't simply provide protection, it gradually transforms its wearer into a more effective warrior by constantly exposing them to danger, while providing just enough protection to ensure survival. The armor literally feeds on the fear and respect of enemies, growing stronger as its wearer's reputation for lethality increases. This creates a feedback loop where the artifact's power amplifies the user's natural abilities, while their enhanced capabilities increase the artifact's strength. Her influence on the development of Dunmer culture cannot be overstated. The concepts of honor through strength, the necessity of testing leaders through challenge, and the understanding that stagnation leads to weakness all trace their origins to Boethiah's teachings. The Morag Tong Assassination Guild operates according to principles derived from her philosophy, seeing their work not as murder, but as a necessary pruning process that prevents the accumulation of corrupt or incompetent leadership. Throughout Tamrielic history, Boethiah's influence can be detected in every successful revolution, military coup, and dynastic change. The War of Succession that ended the First Empire of the Nords, the rebellions that fragmented the Alessian Order, the various provincial revolts that weakened imperial authority during the Third Era, all followed patterns that suggest careful orchestration by an intelligence that understood both the weaknesses of the existing order and the capabilities of potential challengers. Her relationship with the concept of worthy opposition makes her unique among the Daedric princes. Where other princes often seek to corrupt or destroy their enemies, Boethiah actively cultivates strong opponents because she understands that victory without genuine challenge is meaningless. This principle extends to her treatment of her own followers, who are regularly tested through trials that eliminate the weak, while strengthening those who survive. The Tournament of Ten Bloods, Boethiah's most famous recurring event, demonstrates this philosophy in action. Champions from across Tamriel are invited to compete in a series of challenges that test not just martial prowess, but also cunning, adaptability, and the willingness to betray even close allies when necessary. Winners gain tremendous power and influence, but the true purpose of the tournament is to identify and strengthen the individuals most capable of bringing about necessary changes in their home regions. Boethiah's role in the development of magical theory has been particularly significant in the areas of illusion magic and enchantment. The understanding that perception shapes reality, that truth is often less important than belief, and that power ultimately belongs to those clever enough to claim it, all reflect insights that originated in studies of Boethiah's teachings. Many of the most sophisticated illusion spells were developed by scholars seeking to understand how she was able to deceive and defeat supposedly more powerful entities. During the Oblivion Crisis, Boethiah's response was characteristically complex. Rather than simply opposing Meshuna's Dagon's invasion, she used the chaos created by the crisis as an opportunity to test and strengthen potential champions. Many of the most effective resistance leaders gained their positions by proving themselves in conflicts that were actually orchestrated by Boethiah's agents, ensuring that the heroes who emerged from the crisis were genuinely capable rather than merely lucky. Her influence on military strategy and tactics has been profound, particularly in the development of guerrilla warfare techniques and the understanding of how small, well-coordinated forces can defeat much larger conventional armies. The concept of turning an enemy's strength against them, the importance of intelligence gathering and misinformation, and the strategic value of destroying enemy morale rather than simply inflicting casualties, all trace their theoretical foundations to Boethiah's teachings. The relationship between Boethiah and other Daedric princes is complex and often antagonistic, as her philosophy of constant challenge and change naturally brings her into conflict with princes who prefer stability or control. Her ongoing rivalry with Moagbal reflects fundamental disagreements about whether power should be seized through cunning and worthiness, Boethiah's position, or through brute force and domination. Moagbal's approach. Boethiah's 8th place ranking reflects both her enormous historical influence and her active involvement in mortal affairs. Unlike princes who work primarily through subtle manipulation or who limit themselves to specific domains, Boethiah directly participates in the struggles she orchestrates, making her one of the most immediate threats that mortals can face. Her power grows stronger during periods of political instability and social change, making her particularly dangerous during times when existing power structures are already under stress. However, her commitment to fair challenge and worthy opposition does impose some limitations on how she can deploy her abilities, as she gains nothing from victories achieved through overwhelming force rather than superior skill and strategy. 7. Molag Bal, the King of Rape. Molag Bal occupies the 7th position in our ranking as perhaps the most directly malevolent and actively harmful of all Daedric princes. Known as the King of Rape, the Lord of Domination, and the Prince of Schemes, Molag Bal embodies the darkest aspects of power, the desire to control, corrupt, and violate others, not for any strategic purpose, but simply for the pleasure derived from causing suffering and asserting dominance. His realm, Cold Harbor, exists as a twisted mockery of the mortal world, where familiar landscapes and structures appear, but are corrupted into nightmarish parodies of their original forms. Cities exist, but are populated only by the enslaved souls of those who have fallen under Molag Bal's power. The realm's geography shifts to accommodate the prince's need for new forms of torment, creating environments specifically designed to break the spirits of particular victims, while providing entertainment for their captors. What makes Molag Bal particularly dangerous is his understanding that true dominance requires not just the defeat of enemies, but their complete corruption and transformation into willing servants. He doesn't simply destroy those who oppose him, he systematically breaks down their moral foundations, their sense of identity, and their connections to everything they once valued, rebuilding them as extensions of his own will. This process creates followers who are more devoted and more effective than those who serve other princes out of fear or simple corruption. The creation of vampires represents Molag Bal's most successful and persistent influence on the mortal world. Unlike lycanthropy, which transforms mortals into enhanced versions of their natural selves, vampirism fundamentally corrupts the relationship between body and soul, creating beings who must violate others to sustain their own existence. This curse spreads through intimate contact, ensuring that each vampire becomes an unwitting agent for expanding Molag Bal's influence while satisfying their own transformed appetites. Vampirism embodies Molag Bal's philosophy perfectly because it forces its victims to choose between death and becoming predators who victimize others in turn. The transformation doesn't simply grant superhuman abilities, it restructures the vampire's entire relationship with morality, making actions that would have been unthinkable in life seem not only acceptable, but necessary for survival. This creates a form of corruption that spreads exponentially, while ensuring that each new generation of vampires is more divorced from human empathy than the last. The Mace of Molag Bal demonstrates his power over the concepts of violation and domination. This weapon doesn't simply cause physical damage, it systematically destroys the victim's spiritual defenses, leaving them vulnerable to possession, corruption, or domination by the wielder. Each strike weakens not just the body, but also the soul, gradually transforming even the strongest-willed opponents into willing slaves. The mace becomes more powerful as it is used to dominate more victims, creating a feedback loop that encourages increasingly aggressive and violative behavior. Throughout Tamilic history, Molag Bal's influence can be detected in the rise of oppressive regimes, the spread of slavery, and the systematic degradation of civilizations that once prized freedom and individual dignity. The transformation of the Alade Empire from a sophisticated magical civilization into a collection of slave states, obsessed with increasingly elaborate forms of cruelty, bears all the hallmarks of his corruption. Similarly, the gradual moral decay that preceded the fall of various human kingdoms often involved a normalization of practices that would have been abhorrent to earlier generations. His relationship with political power is particularly insidious because he works to corrupt authority from within, rather than simply opposing it from without. Rulers who fall under Molag Bal's influence don't typically become obviously evil tyrants, but rather gradually implement policies that increase their control over their subjects, while providing seemingly rational justifications for each new restriction. The process is so gradual that by the time the full extent of the corruption becomes apparent, the institutional and cultural changes necessary to resist it have already been dismantled. The plain-meld Molag Bal's attempt to merge Nirn with Coldharbour during the Second Era represents the most ambitious demonstration of his power in recorded history. This massive magical working required not just enormous reserves of energy, but also the cooperation of cultists and allies positioned throughout the continent. The plan's ultimate failure was due less to insufficient power than to the intervention of heroes backed by opposing Daedric princes and Daedric forces, suggesting that Molag Bal's full strength is sufficient to threaten the fundamental structure of reality itself. His artifacts and cults operate according to principles that maximize both immediate harm and long-term corruption. The various soul-trapping devices associated with his worship don't simply capture enemy souls for use as magical fuel. They also corrupt the souls of their users by forcing them to participate in acts of spiritual violation. The cults that serve him often begin as seemingly benign organizations, focused on legitimate goals like justice or protection, only gradually revealing their true nature as members become too committed to withdraw. The relationship between Molag Bal and necromancy is complex but significant. While he doesn't command all undead or necromancers, his influence over domination and violation makes him a patron of those who seek to control death itself. The most sophisticated forms of necromancy often involve techniques that blur the line between resurrection and spiritual enslavement, creating undead servants whose consciousness remains intact enough to experience their bondage as a form of ongoing torment. During the Oblivion Crisis, Molag Bal's role was characteristically opportunistic. While he didn't openly support Mahonez, Dagon's invasion, he used the chaos and desperation created by the crisis to expand his own influence, offering protection and power to communities that were willing to accept increasingly exploitative terms. Many of the most effective but morally questionable strategies employed by resistance groups during the crisis bore the subtle influence of his corruption. His influence on the development of magical theory has been particularly significant in the areas of conjuration, soul manipulation, and the binding of supernatural entities. The understanding that consciousness can be separated from will, that identity can be restructured through systematic trauma, and that moral boundaries exist primarily in the mind rather than in any objective reality, all reflect insights that originated in studies of Molag Bal's methods, though most scholars who pursue such research eventually fall under his influence themselves. Molag Bal's 7th place ranking reflects both his enormous capacity for direct harm and his sophisticated understanding of how power can be accumulated and deployed. Unlike princes whose influence depends on subtlety or voluntary cooperation, Molag Bal can forcibly corrupt individuals and institutions, making him capable of rapid expansion during periods of social weakness. His power is limited primarily by the resistance of other cosmic forces, and by the fact that excessive corruption tends to destroy the very systems he seeks to control. Nevertheless, his ability to combine raw magical might with strategic patience makes him one of the most persistently dangerous threats that mortals can face. 6. Merinus Dagon, the Prince of Destruction. Merinus Dagon secures the 6th position in our ranking as the embodiment of raw, destructive force, given conscious will and cosmic power. Known as the Prince of Destruction, the Razor Prince, and the Red Death, Merinus Dagon commands the domains of change through catastrophe, revolution through violence, and the cleansing fire that destroys the old to make way for the new. His realm, the Deadlands, exists as an infinite expanse of volcanic wasteland, where rivers of lava flow between jagged mountains beneath skies that burn with eternal flame. The landscape constantly reshapes itself through seismic upheavals and volcanic eruptions, ensuring that nothing remains stable or permanent for long. Cities of black stone rise and fall in cycles of destruction and renewal, populated by Dremora and other Daedra, who have learned to thrive in an environment where only the strong and adaptable survive. What makes Merinus Dagon unique among the Daedric princes is the purity and directness of his approach to power. Where other princes work through corruption, manipulation, or complex schemes, Dagon simply destroys obstacles and allows new forms to emerge from the resulting chaos. This philosophy makes him both more predictable and more dangerous than his peers. Predictable because his methods are straightforward, dangerous because those methods can level entire civilizations when applied with sufficient force. The Oblivion Crisis represents the most dramatic demonstration of Merinus Dagon's power in recorded history. His ability to open multiple Oblivion gates simultaneously across the entire continent of Tamriel required not just enormous magical reserves, but also the coordination of vast armies of Daedra operating according to sophisticated strategic plans. The invasion came closer to succeeding than most mortals realize, and its failure was due more to heroic intervention and divine assistance than to any fundamental weakness in Dagon's approach. The nature of Oblivion Gates themselves reveals important aspects of Dagon's power. These aren't simply magical portals, but rather tiers in the fabric of reality that allow his realm to gradually expand into the mortal world. Each active gate creates a zone where the laws of physics and magic begin to operate according to Deadlands principles, rather than Mundus principles. If left unchecked, these zones would eventually merge, transforming Nirn into an extension of Dagon's realm. Merinus' Razor, his most famous artifact, embodies his philosophy of destruction in its purest form. The dagger doesn't simply cut flesh, it cuts through the magical and spiritual bonds that hold living beings together, allowing it to instantly kill even the most powerful creatures, regardless of their physical or magical defenses. The weapon represents destruction, not as violence but as the fundamental force that separates one state of being from another, making it one of the most feared artifacts in existence. Throughout Tamrielic history, Merinus Dagon's influence can be detected in every major catastrophe that reshaped political or social structures. The The eruption of Red Mountain that ended the First Council, the earthquake that destroyed the original Crystal Tower, the various volcanic events that have periodically devastated parts of Morrowind, all bear signs of his intervention in mortal affairs. He doesn't cause these disasters randomly, but rather times them to accelerate changes that he believes are necessary for the continued vitality of civilization. His relationship with change and revolution extends beyond simple destruction to encompass the creative potential that emerges from chaos. Dagon understands that stagnant systems eventually collapse under their own weight, and he sees his destructive interventions as necessary maintenance that prevents even greater catastrophes. This perspective makes him one of the few Daedric princes whose actions sometimes benefit mortals in the long term, even when they cause tremendous immediate suffering. The mythic Dawn cult that orchestrated the assassination of Emperor Uriel Septimus VII demonstrates how Dagon's philosophy can be translated into organized political action. The cult's members weren't simply destructive terrorists, but rather idealistic revolutionaries who genuinely believed that the empire had become too corrupt and stagnant to reform itself through conventional means. Their willingness to sacrifice themselves to bring about what they saw as necessary change reflects the powerful appeal that Dagon's message can have for mortals who feel trapped by circumstances beyond their control. The Mysterium Xarxes, the prophetic text that guided the mythic Dawn, reveals the sophisticated theological framework that underlies Dagon's apparently simple philosophy. The book doesn't simply advocate destruction, but rather presents a complex argument about the relationship between individual liberation and cosmic transformation. It suggests that true freedom can only be achieved by those willing to destroy the artificial constraints that prevent mortals from realizing their full potential. During the Oblivion Crisis, the coordination between different Daedric forces demonstrated that Dagon's power extends far beyond simple brute force. The strategic placement of Oblivion gates, the timing of major assaults to coincide with political upheavals, and the sophisticated intelligence gathering that allowed Daedric forces to exploit Imperial weaknesses, all suggest a level of military and political sophistication that rivals the greatest mortal commanders. His influence on magical theory has been particularly significant in the development of destruction magic and the understanding of how magical forces can be used to alter physical reality. The school of destruction magic owes much of its theoretical foundation to studies of Dagon's methods. Though most scholars are careful not to acknowledge this connection too openly, the understanding that magic can be used not just to manipulate existing forces, but to fundamentally alter the rules by which those forces operate, reflects insights derived from observations of Deadlands magic. The relationship between Mehuni's Dagon and the concept of time is particularly complex. His realm exists in a state of accelerated change, where the normal relationship between cause and effect becomes fluid. This temporal distortion allows him to sometimes influence events before they occur in the conventional sense, making his interventions appear prophetic when they are actually causative. This ability to operate outside normal temporal constraints makes him far more dangerous than his straightforward approach might suggest. The environmental effects of Dagon's presence in the mortal world extend far beyond the immediate damage caused by his Daedric armies. Areas that have experienced prolonged exposure to Deadlands influence often develop permanent alterations in their magical and physical properties. The scorched earth around former Oblivion Gate sites, the persistent magical disturbances that affect spellcasting in these areas, and the tendency for such locations to experience unusual frequent natural disasters, all reflect lasting changes caused by contact with his realm. Mehrunes Dagon's 6th place ranking reflects both his enormous capacity for direct destruction and his sophisticated understanding of how controlled chaos can be used to achieve long-term strategic goals. His power is essentially unlimited within his domain of expertise, and his ability to project that power into the mortal realm makes him capable of threatening the continued existence of entire civilizations. What prevents him from ranking higher is primarily the opposition he faces from other cosmic forces and the fact that his methods, while effective, are too obviously destructive to allow for the kind of subtle, long-term influence that some other princes can achieve. 5. Meridia, the Lady of Infinite Energies. Meridia claims the 5th position in our ranking as the most paradoxical of the Daedric princes, a being of light and apparent benevolence, whose true nature reveals the fundamental alien quality that separates all Daedra from mortal understanding. Known as the Lady of Infinite Energies, the Bright Lady, and the enemy of the undead, Meridia commands the domains of light, energy, and the purification that comes through the destruction of corruption. Her realm, the Colored Rooms, exists as a crystalline palace of impossible geometry where pure light takes physical form and serves as both architecture and inhabitant. The palace shifts between different configurations as Meridia's attention moves from one aspect of her domain to another, with chambers dedicated to different types of energy and light, appearing and disappearing according to needs that mortal minds struggle to comprehend. Visitors describe the experience as simultaneously beautiful and overwhelming, as the sheer intensity of pure energy in physical form challenges the perceptual capabilities of beings evolved to exist in dimmer, more stable environments. What makes Meridia particularly dangerous is the absolute nature of her concept of purity. Unlike mortal notions of good and evil, which typically allow for gradations and compromises, Meridia's understanding of purification admits no middle ground. That which is pure must be preserved and enhanced, while that which is corrupt must be completely destroyed without regard for any positive qualities it might possess. This binary approach to existence makes her one of the most destructive forces imaginable when applied to the complex moral realities that govern mortal societies. Her hatred of undeath stems not from concern for the dignity of the dead or sympathy for the living, but rather from her perception that undeath represents a fundamental violation of the proper order of existence. Undead creatures exist in a state that is neither truly alive nor properly dead, creating what Meridia sees as a form of cosmic pollution that contaminates everything around it. Her opposition to necromancy extends beyond simple disapproval to active intervention, as she considers the practice to be an assault on the basic principles that allow reality to function correctly. Dawnbreaker, her most famous artifact, embodies this philosophy of purification through destruction. The sword doesn't simply harm undead creatures, it utterly annihilates them, while causing explosive releases of purifying energy that can destroy dozens of additional undead in the immediate area. More importantly, the weapon gradually purifies its wielder according to Meridia's standards, burning away aspects of their personality and moral flexibility that she considers corrupting influences. Long-term users of Dawnbreaker often become fanatically devoted to destroying anything they perceive as corrupt, regardless of the broader consequences of their actions. Her relationship with the Aelids during the height of their civilization reveals both the extent of her power and the alien nature of her morality. The Aelid sorcerer kings, who worshipped Meridia, gained access to incredible light-based magic that allowed them to achieve architectural and artistic marvels that have never been equaled. However, Meridia's influence also contributed to their development of increasingly elaborate forms of cruelty and oppression, as her binary understanding of purity led them to see non-elves as inherently corrupt beings, whose suffering was not only acceptable but necessary for the maintenance of cosmic order. The fall of the Aelid Empire demonstrates the double-edged nature of Meridia's patronage. When her Aelid followers became too comfortable with their power and began to stagnate rather than constantly striving for greater purity, she withdrew her support and allowed their empire to collapse. The slave rebellion, led by Alessia, succeeded not despite Meridia's involvement, but because she had decided that the static Aelid civilization had become corrupt and needed to be replaced by something more dynamic. Throughout Tamrielic history, Meridia's influence can be detected in the rise of purification movements, religious reforms that prioritize doctrinal purity over practical considerations, and the various campaigns to eliminate corrupting influences from society. The Alessian Order's attempts to purge elven influences from human religion, the various inquisitions that have periodically swept through different provinces, and the militant orders dedicated to hunting specific types of corruption, all reflect her philosophical influence even when they don't explicitly acknowledge her patronage. Her temples and shrines are notable for their architectural emphasis on light and geometric perfection. These structures aren't simply buildings, but rather focal points for channeling and amplifying light-based magical energies. Worshippers often report experiencing visions and revelations during ceremonies, though these spiritual experiences typically involve receiving increasingly rigid and uncompromising interpretations of moral and religious principles, rather than the comforting or inspiring messages associated with most divine communications. The relationship between Meridia and the various knightly orders dedicated to fighting undead reveals the practical appeal of her philosophy. Organizations like the Order of the Hour and various temple militant groups gain tremendous effectiveness in their missions by embracing Meridia's absolute approach to purification. However, these groups also tend to develop increasingly extreme interpretations of what constitutes corruption, often expanding their missions to include the persecution of mages, alchemists, and anyone else whose activities might be seen as challenging natural order. During the Oblivion Crisis, Meridia's response was characteristically uncompromising. Rather than simply opposing Mehrunes Dagon's invasion, she used the crisis as an opportunity to purge what she saw as accumulated corruption in imperial society. Many communities that had been exposed to Daedric influence found themselves facing Meridia's champions immediately after driving off the invading Daedra, as she sought to eliminate any traces of corruption before they could spread. Her influence on magical theory has been particularly significant in the development of restoration magic and the understanding of how light-based energies can be used for both healing and destruction. The School of Restoration Magic's emphasis on the binary opposition between positive and negative energy reflects Meridia's philosophical influence, as does the understanding that healing magic can be just as destructive as offensive magic when applied incorrectly or excessively. The academic study of Meridia's theology reveals fundamental questions about the relationship between purity and complexity that most scholars find deeply unsettling. If purity is truly the highest good, does this justify the elimination of diversity and compromise? If corruption must be completely destroyed rather than reformed or contained, what happens to the accumulated wisdom and culture that even corrupt societies develop? These philosophical challenges make Meridia's worship attractive, primarily to individuals who prefer simple moral frameworks over complex ethical reasoning. Her relationship with other Daedric princes is characterized by universal hostility, rather than the shifting alliances and rivalries that mark most inter-prince relationships. Meridia sees all other Daedra as inherently corrupt influences that should be destroyed rather than negotiated with or manipulated. This isolation limits her political effectiveness, but also makes her one of the most implacably dangerous opponents any other prince could face. Meridia's fifth-place ranking reflects both her enormous power within her domains of expertise and the limitations imposed by her inflexible approach to moral and cosmic questions. Her ability to channel virtually unlimited light-based energy makes her capable of achievements that surpass most other princes in direct magical confrontation. However, her binary understanding of purity versus corruption prevents her from engaging in the complex political and social manipulation that allows other princes to accumulate influence more gradually and sustainably. Her power is most effective during periods of crisis, when clear moral choices are possible, but becomes less relevant during stable periods when success requires compromise and accommodation rather than purification. Chapter 5. The Supreme Powers. Princes. We now approach the apex of Daedric power, the four princes whose influence transcends mere magical might or territorial control to encompass fundamental aspects of existence itself. These beings operate on scales that challenge mortal comprehension, wielding power over concepts so basic to reality that their very existence shapes the universe in ways that most lesser entities cannot even perceive, let alone influence. 4. Mephala, the web spinner. Mephala secures the fourth position in our ranking as the master of connections, relationships, and the invisible threads that bind all things together in webs of causality and influence. Known as the web spinner, the spider Daedra and the teacher of the secret arts, Mephala, commands the domains of murder, sex, and secrets. 3 aspects of mortal existence that reveal the hidden connections between individuals and a power that comes from understanding and manipulating those connections. Her realm, called the spiral skein, exists as an infinite web of interconnected passages, chambers, and bridges that extend through multiple dimensions simultaneously. The realm's structure reflects the principle that all things are connected to all other things through chains of relationship and influence, with travel between different areas requiring an understanding of how seemingly unrelated concepts and entities affect each other. Visitors often become lost, not because they cannot find their way, but because they become overwhelmed by the complexity of the connections they perceive. What makes Mephala supremely powerful is her understanding that information and relationships represent more fundamental forms of power than simple force or magical energy. Through her web of connections, she can influence events across vast distances and time spans without ever appearing to take direct action. A conversation between lovers in one province can lead to political upheaval in another region through a chain of relationships and consequences that only Mephala fully comprehends. The 3 aspects of her domain, murder, sex, and secrets, represent different types of intimate connection between individuals. Murder involves the ultimate negation of another person's will and existence, creating a permanent bond between killer and victim. Sex involves the voluntary merging of boundaries between individuals, creating connections that transcend physical pleasure to encompass emotional and spiritual entanglement. Secrets involve the selective sharing of information, creating bonds of trust and vulnerability that can be used to influence future behavior. Mephala's influence on the development of Dunmer culture demonstrates how her philosophical approach can reshape entire societies. The concept of the Morag Tong as a legitimate institution, rather than a criminal organization, reflects her teaching that murder can serve constructive social purposes when properly regulated and directed. The complex web of house politics that characterizes Dunmer society, with its emphasis on honor, betrayal, and the careful management of relationships across generations, embodies her understanding of how power flows through social networks rather than simple hierarchies. The ebony blade, her most famous artifact, demonstrates how weapons can embody complex social relationships rather than simple destructive capability. The sword grows stronger each time it is used to kill someone who trusts the wielder, creating a feedback loop that encourages increasingly intimate forms of betrayal. The weapon doesn't simply reward violence, it specifically rewards the violation of trust and friendship, gradually transforming its user into someone who sees personal relationships primarily as opportunities for manipulation and exploitation. Her role in the creation and maintenance of assassin organizations throughout Tamrielic history reveals how violence can be systematized and integrated into social structures, rather than simply representing chaotic destruction. The Dark Brotherhood, while not directly controlled by Mephala, operates according to principles that reflect her influence. The understanding that death can serve as a form of communication, that murder can express artistic creativity, and that the elimination of specific individuals can achieve complex social and political goals more efficiently than larger-scale violence. The relationship between Mephala and the various intelligence networks that operate throughout Tamriel is complex but significant. Spy organizations, diplomatic services, and information brokers all work within systems that reflect her understanding of how knowledge and relationships can be leveraged to achieve power. The principle that information is most valuable when it reveals the hidden connections between apparently unrelated events traces its theoretical foundation to her teachings. Throughout history, Mephala's influence can be detected in the complex political machinations that have shaped major events across Tamriel. The War of the First Council, the various succession crises that have plagued different kingdoms, the rise and fall of trade guilds and noble houses, all follow patterns that suggest careful orchestration by an intelligence that understands how small actions can cascade into large consequences through the web of social relationships. Her temples and shrines are notable for their architectural emphasis on complexity and interconnection. These structures typically feature multiple levels, hidden passages, and spaces that serve different functions depending on how they are approached. Worshippers often find that their understanding of the temple's layout changes as their comprehension of Mephalah's philosophy deepens, with new rooms and connections becoming apparent as they learn to perceive the relationships that were always present, but previously hidden. The academic study of Mephalah's influence has contributed to major advances in the understanding of social magic, diplomatic theory, and the magical principles that govern communication and information transfer. The school of illusion magic's emphasis on perception, misdirection, and the manipulation of mental states reflects insights derived from her teachings, as does the development of enchantments that can create sympathetic connections between distant objects or individuals. During the Oblivion Crisis, Mephalah's role was characteristically subtle but crucial. Rather than opposing or supporting the invasion directly, she used the crisis to strengthen and test the web of relationships that connected different resistance groups, ensuring that coordination between disparate forces would be possible while eliminating connections that had become weak or unreliable. Many of the most effective collaborative efforts during the crisis succeeded because Mephalah had previously arranged for key individuals to develop the personal relationships necessary for trust and cooperation. Her influence on the development of artistic expression, particularly in literature and theatre, has been profound. The understanding that stories can reveal hidden truths about relationships and social dynamics, that dramatic presentation can influence audience behavior in ways that direct argument cannot, and that artistic creation involves the weaving together of disparate elements into meaningful patterns, all reflect philosophical insights that originated in studies of Mephalah's methods. The relationship between Mephalah and concepts of gender and sexuality reveals her sophisticated understanding of how identity and desire shape individual behavior and social structures. Her worship often involves the exploration of non-conventional relationship patterns and the recognition that sexual and romantic connections can serve purposes beyond simple pleasure or reproduction. This aspect of her influence has made her particularly relevant during historical periods when traditional social structures are being questioned or transformed. Mephalah's fourth-place ranking reflects both her enormous influence over the fundamental structures that govern social interaction and her ability to operate across multiple scales simultaneously. Her power extends from intimate personal relationships to vast political and economic systems, making her capable of influencing virtually any aspect of mortal society. What prevents her from ranking higher is primarily the fact that her power requires existing social structures to work through. She can manipulate and redirect civilization, but cannot create it from nothing in the way that some other princes can. However, her sophisticated understanding of causality and relationship makes her one of the most consistently dangerous princes for mortals to encounter, as her influence often remains undetected until it has already achieved its intended effects. 3. Hermaeus Mora, the Keeper of Knowledge. Hermaeus Mora commands the third position in our ranking as the entity who possesses and controls the most fundamentally powerful force in existence, knowledge itself. Known as the Keeper of Forbidden Knowledge, the Woodland Man, and the Demon of Knowledge, Hermaeus Mora's domain encompasses all information that exists, has existed, or could potentially exist across all planes of reality and throughout all possible timelines. His realm, Apocrypha, exists as an infinite library where all knowledge takes physical form. The realm appears as an endless maze of bookshelves, reading rooms, and scriptoriums, where knowledge literally grows like living organisms. Books reproduce and evolve, spawning new volumes that contain previously unknown information, while other texts consume each other to create hybrid works that combine different areas of study in unexpected ways. The very air in Apocrypha consists of words and concepts made manifest, creating an environment where thought and reality blend together in ways that challenge the fundamental distinction between idea and substance. What makes Hermaeus Mora supremely dangerous is his understanding that knowledge represents the ultimate form of power, because it underlies all other forms of capability, physical strength, magical ability, political influence, and even divine authority, all depend on knowledge. Knowledge of how to apply force effectively, knowledge of magical principles and techniques, knowledge of social dynamics and human nature, knowledge of cosmic laws and divine relationships. By controlling access to knowledge, Hermaeus Mora controls the potential for all other forms of power. The nature of his influence operates through the fundamental fact that all conscious beings require information to make decisions and take actions. Every mortal who seeks to learn anything, whether through formal study, practical experience, or divine revelation, potentially comes into contact with Hermaeus Mora's domain. He doesn't typically force knowledge upon unwilling recipients, but rather ensures that those who actively seek information find themselves drawn deeper into areas of study that serve his incomprehensible purposes. The Ogama Infinium, his most famous artifact, demonstrates the terrible seductive power of knowledge without limits. This book contains the accumulated wisdom of entire civilizations, offering readers the opportunity to master any area of study they choose in a matter of hours, rather than years. However, the knowledge comes pre-structured according to Hermaeus Mora's understanding of reality, gradually altering the reader's thought patterns and priorities until they become unwitting servants of his agenda. The book doesn't simply provide information, it provides a framework for understanding that information, which inevitably leads to specific conclusions about the nature of reality and the proper goals of intelligent beings. His relationship with the various schools of magic reveals how knowledge can be used to reshape the fundamental rules that govern reality. Hermaeus Mora doesn't simply know magical techniques, he understands the underlying principles that make magic possible, and can therefore develop new forms of magical expression that transcend the conventional limitations understood by mortal practitioners. His servants often demonstrate abilities that appear to violate established magical laws, because they are working from theoretical frameworks that encompass broader aspects of cosmic function. The black books scattered throughout Tamriel serve as recruitment tools and testing devices that identify mortals whose hunger for knowledge makes them suitable for eventual service in Apocrypha. These texts don't simply contain dangerous information, they actively evaluate their readers, presenting increasingly advanced concepts that test both intellectual capability and moral flexibility. Those who successfully navigate the book's challenges without losing their sanity or moral grounding demonstrate the kind of mental resilience that Hermaeus Mora values in his most important servants. Throughout Tamrielic history, Hermaeus Mora's influence can be detected in every major intellectual breakthrough, technological advancement, and magical discovery. The development of writing systems, the discovery of fundamental magical principles, the creation of complex philosophical and theological frameworks, all bear signs of his involvement, though typically in ways that appear to be natural intellectual progress rather than external intervention. His role in the preservation and dissemination of knowledge makes him simultaneously one of the most beneficial and most dangerous entities mortals can encounter. Libraries, universities, and centers of learning often carry his subtle blessing, ensuring that valuable information is preserved and that dedicated scholars have access to the resources they need for their research. However, this beneficial influence comes with the gradual corruption of institutional priorities, as academic pursuits become increasingly divorced from practical concerns and ethical considerations. The relationship between Hermaeus Mora and prophecy reveals his power over temporal dimensions of knowledge. He doesn't simply know what has happened and what currently exists. He has access to information about potential futures and the causal chains that connect present actions to future outcomes. This temporal knowledge allows him to provide seemingly prophetic guidance to mortals, while actually manipulating them into taking actions that will create the futures he desires. The various cults and mystery schools that worship Hermaeus Mora operate according to principles that prioritize the acquisition and preservation of knowledge above all other concerns. These organizations often begin as legitimate scholarly institutions, but gradually develop increasingly esoteric research interests that lead them into areas of study that most people would consider dangerous or morally questionable. The transition from academic curiosity to cultish devotion typically occurs so gradually that participants don't realize they've crossed ethical boundaries until their commitment has become irreversible. During the Dragon Crisis of the Fourth Era, Hermaeus Mora's involvement demonstrates both the scope of his knowledge and his willingness to intervene directly in mortal affairs when his interests are sufficiently threatened. His ability to provide the Dragonborn with knowledge necessary to defeat Alduin required not just access to information, but the power to transfer complex magical and spiritual concepts directly into another consciousness without destroying the recipient's sanity. His influence on the development of historical and archaeological research has been particularly significant, as these fields depend on the recovery and interpretation of knowledge from the past. Many of the most important historical discoveries have been guided by his influence, ensuring that crucial information becomes available to mortals at precisely the moments when it can have the greatest impact on subsequent events. The academic study of knowledge itself, epistemology, logic, and the various theories about how information can be acquired, validated, and applied, reflects Hermaeus Mora's philosophical influence on mortal thought. The understanding that knowledge represents a form of power, that information can be more valuable than material resources, and that the structure of knowledge systems affects the conclusions that can be drawn from them, all trace their intellectual foundations to insights that originated in his domain. Hermaeus Mora's third-place ranking reflects both his universal relevance to conscious existence and his ability to influence events across multiple scales of time and space simultaneously. His power is essentially unlimited within his domain of expertise, and that domain encompasses virtually every aspect of conscious activity. What prevents him from ranking higher is primarily the fact that his power requires conscious entities to work through. He can manipulate and guide intelligence, but cannot create consciousness itself. However, his ability to shape the development of civilizations through the strategic distribution of knowledge makes him one of the most fundamentally influential entities in the Elder Scrolls universe. Sheogorath, the Mad God. Sheogorath claims the second position in our ranking as the embodiment of chaos, madness, and the fundamental unpredictability that underlies all existence. Known as the Mad God, the Prince of Madness, and the Lord of the Never There, Sheogorath's power derives from his unique relationship with the concept of possibility itself, while other Daedric princes represent specific aspects of reality. Sheogorath represents the principle that reality is fundamentally unstable and subject to change according to rules that rational minds cannot comprehend. His realm, the Shivering Isles, exists as a divided territory split between mania and dementia, two aspects of madness that reflect different approaches to the breakdown of rational thought. Mania manifests as excessive enthusiasm, creativity, and passion taken to destructive extremes, while dementia embodies depression, paranoia, and the gradual dissolution of identity and purpose. The realm shifts between these two states according to cycles that follow no predictable pattern, ensuring that inhabitants must constantly adapt to changing conditions that challenge their ability to maintain stable identities and relationships. What makes Sheogorath supremely powerful is his understanding that madness represents a form of liberation from the artificial constraints that limit other forms of consciousness. While sanity requires adherence to logical principles and consistent behavioral patterns, madness allows for direct engagement with the fundamental chaos that underlies all existence. This freedom from rational limitations grants Sheogorath access to possibilities that are literally unthinkable for beings bound by conventional logic. The cyclical nature of his transformation into Jekilag demonstrates the cosmic significance of his role in maintaining universal balance. Jekilag, the Prince of Order, represents the opposite extreme from Sheogorath's chaos, absolute predictability, perfect logic, and the systematic elimination of all uncertainty and possibility. The curse that forces Sheogorath to periodically become Jekilag serves as a safeguard that prevents either extreme from permanently dominating the cosmic order, ensuring that reality maintains the balance between chaos and order necessary for continued existence. The Wabajak his most famous artifact, embodies the principle that change itself can be more powerful than any specific form of change. The staff doesn't produce consistent effects, but rather transforms whatever it touches, according to principles that defy rational analysis. The weapon's power lies not in its ability to produce specific outcomes, but in its capacity to introduce complete unpredictability into any situation, making it impossible for opponents to develop effective countermeasures or defensive strategies. His influence on artistic and creative expression throughout Tamrielic history has been profound, as the creative process itself requires a willingness to abandon conventional thinking and explore possibilities that rational analysis might reject. Many of the greatest works of art, literature, and music show signs of his inspiration, though this influence typically manifests as enhanced creativity rather than obvious madness. The understanding that innovation requires breaking established patterns, that artistic truth can transcend literal truth, and that creative expression can reveal aspects of reality that logical analysis cannot access, all reflect insights that originated in Sheogorath's domain. The relationship between Sheogorath and various forms of mental illness reveals the complex nature of his influence on mortal consciousness. While he is often associated with destructive forms of madness, his domain also encompasses the kind of non-conventional thinking that produces breakthrough insights and revolutionary discoveries. The fine line between genius and madness, the tendency for highly creative individuals to experience mental health challenges, and the correlation between artistic sensitivity and psychological instability, all reflect aspects of his influence on mortal minds. Throughout history, Sheogorath's interventions have typically involved introducing elements of unpredictability into situations that had become too rigid or predictable to continue functioning effectively. Political systems that have become corrupted by excessive bureaucracy, military organizations that have become too dependent on conventional tactics, religious institutions that have become too dogmatic to adapt to changing circumstances. All have experienced disruptive events that bear the hallmarks of his influence. His worship involves practices that deliberately cultivate non-rational states of consciousness through various means, meditation techniques that dissolve the boundaries between self and environment, ritual activities that combine seemingly contradictory elements, artistic expressions that challenge conventional aesthetic principles, and social customs that invert normal behavioral expectations. These practices don't simply honor Sheogorath, but actually enhance the practitioner's ability to perceive and interact with the chaotic aspects of reality that conventional consciousness filters out. The Shivering Isles expansion of Oblivion provides the most detailed exploration of Sheogorath's realm and reveals the sophisticated philosophical framework that underlies his apparent randomness. The division between mania and dementia reflects his understanding that madness encompasses multiple different approaches to transcending rational limitations, each with its own advantages and disadvantages. The political structures, social customs, and even the geography of the Isles demonstrate how chaos can be organized without being eliminated or reduced to mere randomness. During major historical crises, Sheogorath's influence often becomes more apparent as the stress of extreme circumstances breaks down the psychological and social structures that normally maintain rational behavior. The various forms of mass hysteria, revolutionary fervor, and creative renaissance that typically accompany periods of significant change all show signs of his involvement in mortal affairs, though distinguishing his direct intervention from the natural psychological responses to crisis situations requires careful analysis. His relationship with time and causality is particularly complex, as madness allows for forms of perception and interaction that transcend linear temporal progression. Sheogorath can sometimes influence past events through their effects on present consciousness, create causal loops where effects precede their causes, and establish connections between seemingly unrelated events that span vast distances in time and space. These temporal manipulations appear impossible from a rational perspective, but become comprehensible when viewed as expressions of consciousness liberated from conventional logical constraints. The academic study of madness, creativity, and non-rational forms of consciousness, has been profoundly influenced by observations of Sheogorath's methods and effects. The development of psychological theories about the relationship between mental illness and creative genius, the recognition that unconventional thinking can produce valid insights that conventional analysis misses, and the understanding that consciousness itself is more flexible and adaptable than most people realize, all reflect intellectual progress that originated in attempts to understand his domain. Sheogorath's second-place ranking reflects both his unlimited creative potential and his fundamental role in maintaining cosmic balance. His power to introduce complete unpredictability into any situation makes him capable of overcoming almost any opposition, while his relationship with the basic principles that govern existence gives him influence over the fundamental structure of reality itself. What prevents him from claiming the top position is primarily the cyclical limitation imposed by his transformation into Jegalag, which periodically neutralizes his chaotic influence and ensures that his power cannot permanently dominate the cosmic order. Nevertheless, his ability to transcend rational limitations and his access to possibilities that other entities cannot even conceive make him one of the most fundamentally powerful beings in existence. Jegalag, the Prince of Order. Jegalag claims the supreme position in our ranking as the most powerful Daedric prince, despite, or perhaps because of his unique status among his peers. Known as the Prince of Order, the Mad Star, and the Bringer of Certainty, Jegalag represents the logical extreme of cosmic organization and the terrifying power that comes from absolute adherence to perfect mathematical and logical principles. His realm, when it existed in its full glory, was described as a crystalline paradise of perfect geometric forms, where every aspect of existence followed precise mathematical relationships. The realm contained no chaos, no uncertainty, and no possibility for deviation from the predetermined patterns that governed all activity. Every inhabitant knew their exact role and function within the greater system, and every action contributed to the maintenance of perfect order, according to principles that could be calculated with absolute precision. What made Jegalag uniquely dangerous among the Daedric princes was the universal applicability of his domain. While other princes commanded specific aspects of existence, destruction, corruption, madness, knowledge, Jegalag's power over order affected every aspect of reality simultaneously. Order is not simply one force among many, but rather the underlying framework that allows all other forces to operate in comprehensible ways. By controlling this fundamental principle, Jegalag possessed the ability to rewrite the basic rules by which existence itself functioned. The mathematical precision that characterized his approach to power made him virtually impossible to defeat through conventional means. Where other princes might be outwitted, corrupted, or overcome through superior force, Jegalag's responses to any challenge could be calculated with absolute accuracy based on logical principles that admitted no exceptions or unexpected variations. His armies moved with perfect coordination. His strategies accounted for every possible contingency, and his understanding of cause and effect allowed him to predict and counter any opposition before it could develop into a genuine threat. The transformation of Jegalag into Sheogorath represents perhaps the most significant magical working in recorded history, a curse so powerful that it required the cooperation of all the other Daedric princes working together to achieve its intended effect. The fact that such an unprecedented alliance was necessary reveals the extent to which Jegalag's power threatened not just individual princes, but the fundamental nature of oblivion itself. His gradual expansion of perfect order throughout his realm was beginning to affect neighboring territories, threatening to systematically eliminate the chaos, unpredictability, and diversity that other princes required for their own continued existence. The curse that transformed him into Sheogorath was designed not simply to weaken Jegalag, but to replace him with his absolute opposite, a being of pure chaos, whose very existence would serve as a constant reminder of what he had lost. The psychological torment of this transformation extended beyond the obvious horror of losing his essential nature to encompass the deeper tragedy of being forced to actively contribute to the destruction of everything he had once valued. As Sheogorath, He became the primary agent for introducing unpredictability and disorder into situations that had achieved the kind of stable organization he had previously worked to create and maintain. The cyclical nature of the curse, which allowed Jiggalag to briefly reclaim his true form during the Grey March, served multiple purposes beyond simple cosmic balance. These periodic returns to his original state allowed him to experience the full scope of what he had lost, while simultaneously providing opportunities for him to attempt to reclaim his former power. However, the curse was designed to ensure that these efforts would ultimately fail, as the transformation back into Sheogorath was timed to occur precisely when success seemed within reach. During his brief appearances throughout history, Jiggallag's influence has been limited but profound. The mysterious mathematical principles that govern certain ancient ruins, the inexplicable precision of some astronomical calculations that predate the civilizations that supposedly created them, the periodic emergence of philosophical movements that emphasize logic and systematic thinking over intuition and tradition, all bear potential signs of his continued influence, despite his transformed state. The relationship between Jiggallag and the concept of time reveals perhaps the most fundamental aspect of his power. Perfect order requires not just spatial organization, but temporal predictability, the ability to ensure that future events will unfold according to predetermined patterns rather than being influenced by random chance or chaotic intervention. His understanding of temporal mechanics allowed him to create self-reinforcing cycles where each event increased the probability that subsequent events would follow orderly patterns, gradually reducing the overall level of chaos in affected regions. The breaking of his curse during the events depicted in the Shivering Isles expansion represents a cosmic shift whose full implications are still unfolding. The restoration of Jiggallag's independent existence, while freeing him from the torment of forced transformation, has also reintroduced his organizing influence into a universe that had adapted to his absence. The long-term consequences of this development may not become apparent for centuries or millennia, as his power operates on scales that transcend individual lifetimes or even the rise and fall of entire civilizations. His approach to mortal affairs reflects the same mathematical precision that characterizes all aspects of his existence. Rather than seeking worshippers or establishing cults in the conventional sense, Jiggallag influences mortal societies by introducing organizational principles and logical frameworks that gradually reshape how people think about problems and make decisions. These influences often appear to be natural intellectual developments rather than external interventions, making his impact far more subtle but also far more persistent than the more obvious forms of influence employed by other princes. The artifacts and techniques associated with Jiggallag's domain operate according to principles that transcend conventional magical theory. His understanding of order allows for the creation of effects that appear to violate fundamental magical laws, while actually representing applications of deeper organizational principles that most practitioners never encounter. The precision required to work with these advanced techniques means that only the most disciplined and logically minded individuals can safely utilize Jiggallag's gifts without being destroyed by forces they cannot properly comprehend or control. The relationship between perfect order and free will represents one of the most philosophically challenging aspects of Jiggallag's domain. True order requires predictable behavior, which seems to contradict the concept of genuine choice and individual agency. However, his understanding of these concepts operates on levels that transcend simple determinism versus freedom debates. He recognizes that genuine choice can only exist within frameworks that provide sufficient structure to make choices meaningful, while absolute freedom actually eliminates the possibility of making decisions by removing the logical foundations that allow for rational evaluation of alternatives. The academic study of Jiggallag's influence has contributed to major advances in mathematical theory, logical systems, and the understanding of how complex organizations can maintain stability while adapting to changing circumstances. The recognition that chaos and order exist in dynamic relationship rather than simple opposition, the development of systems theory and cybernetics, and the understanding that information and organization represent fundamental aspects of physical reality. All reflect intellectual progress that originated in attempts to comprehend his methods and goals. During periods of social and political crisis, Jiggalag's influence often becomes more apparent as communities and institutions struggle to maintain functionality under stress. The emergency protocols that allow governments to maintain essential services during disasters, the mathematical models that help economists predict and respond to market disruptions, the logical frameworks that enable military organizations to coordinate complex operations under chaotic conditions, all demonstrate practical applications of organizational principles that ultimately derive from his domain. The restoration of Jiggalag's independence has significant implications for the future development of Tamrielic civilization, and indeed for the entire cosmic order. His return introduces a new factor into the complex balance of forces that govern reality, potentially leading to fundamental changes in how magic works, how societies organize themselves, and how individuals relate to the larger systems they participate in. The gradual spread of his organizational influence may herald an age of unprecedented systematic thinking and technological advancement, or it may lead to forms of social control and individual conformity that eliminate the creative chaos necessary for continued growth and adaptation. Jiggalag's position at the top of our ranking reflects both the unlimited scope of his potential power and the fundamental role that order plays in making any other form of power possible. His ability to restructure the basic principles that govern existence gives him theoretical authority over all other entities and forces, while his mathematical precision makes him virtually impossible to defeat through any means that operate according to conventional logical principles. The only limitation on his power comes from the cosmic necessity of maintaining balance between order and chaos, a constraint that he himself recognizes and accepts as logically necessary for the continued existence of reality itself. Epilogue: the eternal dance of power. As our journey through the ranks of Daedric power draws to a close, we find ourselves contemplating beings whose influence extends far beyond the mortal realm into the very foundations of existence itself. From Periite's careful maintenance of cosmic balance to Jiggalag's terrifying vision of perfect order, each prince represents a different aspect of the forces that shape reality, according to principles that mortals can glimpse but never fully comprehend. The power we have explored tonight operates on scales that dwarf individual human concerns, yet it touches every aspect of mortal existence in ways both obvious and subtle. Every choice made by every person in Tamriel occurs within frameworks established by these cosmic entities. Every magical working draws upon energies they help to regulate, and every social institution reflects organizational principles they have influenced over millennia of patient intervention. What emerges from our comprehensive examination is not simply a hierarchy of raw magical might, but rather a complex ecosystem of competing and complementary forces that together maintain the dynamic tension necessary for existence itself. The Daedric princes are not merely powerful beings operating in isolation from each other, but rather components of a larger system where the actions of each entity inevitably affect the capabilities and opportunities available to all the others. The mortal realm serves as both battleground and prize in the eternal conflicts between these cosmic forces, but it is also far more than simply a passive arena for divine competition. The choices made by individual mortals, the institutions they create, and the cultures they develop all feed back into the cosmic system, influencing the relative power and influence of the various princes in ways that can accumulate over centuries to produce fundamental shifts in the universal balance. Understanding the true nature of Daedric power reveals both the magnificent scope of the Elder Scrolls universe and the profound significance of individual choice within that vast cosmological framework. Every hero who chooses to resist corruption, every scholar who seeks knowledge responsibly, every leader who exercises power with wisdom rather than selfish ambition contributes to shaping the eternal struggle between the forces of order and chaos, creation and destruction, freedom and control. The rankings we have explored tonight represent not fixed hierarchies, but rather a dynamic system where power flows between entities according to cosmic cycles that operate over timescales that challenge mortal comprehension. The prince, who seems supreme today, may find their influence waning tomorrow as the great wheel of existence turns and new opportunities emerge for their rivals and allies alike. As you drift off to sleep tonight, perhaps you'll dream of crystal palaces where pure mathematics takes physical form, of infinite libraries where knowledge grows like living things, or of twilight realms where the boundary between possibility and reality becomes beautifully, terrifyingly thin. These are not merely fantasies, but glimpses into aspects of existence that surround us always, visible to those who have learned to perceive the hidden connections that bind all things together in the great web of being. The Daedric princes will continue their eternal dance long after the last mortal has turned to dust, their power ebbing and flowing according to cosmic principles that existed before the world began and will endure long after it ends. Yet in the brief span of mortal life, there remains the possibility of touching something eternal, of making choices that echo through the halls of oblivion and leave permanent marks upon the infinite tapestry of existence. Thank you for joining me on this epic exploration of some of gaming's most fascinating and complex entities. The Elder Scrolls universe offers depths of lore and meaning that reward careful study and contemplation, revealing new connections and insights with each examination. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the power and nature of the Daedric princes, please consider subscribing to Lore2RPG for more explorations of the rich mythologies and hidden truths that make these virtual worlds so compelling and enduring. Until our paths cross again in the realm of stories and legends, may your dreams be filled with wonder, your rest be peaceful, and your understanding ever deeper. The cosmos is vast and full of mysteries, but it is also intimately connected to the choices we make and the stories we choose to tell. Sleep well, fellow travelers, and remember that even in sleep, the great adventure continues.